How trustworthy are your memories? Sit back, relax, and explore as we're taking a quick peek at Get Even. Get Even is a first-person shooter, stealth, narratively driven exploration game combination that tries to be a whole heck of a lot of things in one complete package. The game was developed by The Farm 51, a company who's no stranger to the first-person perspective. Farm 51's previous projects include the ridiculous and fun World War I supernatural shooter Necrovision and the HD remake of Painkiller. Painkiller, Hell and Damnation. Get it? HD, Hell and Damnation? You clever Polish devs, you. They also made the extremely okay Deadfall Adventures, along with working on a few military projects and taking a dip into VR. Despite their back catalog, Farm 51's games have so far gotten average reviews at best from the general public. I've been a bit skeptical of Farm 51 ever since their release of Painkiller Hell and Damnation. That game was supposed to be a remake of the original Painkiller by People Can Fly, but was thrown in a blender and hollowed out, putting large parts of the original game behind a DLC paywall. Then again, it's difficult to say how much of that is the fault of the developers or its publisher, Nordic Games, now known as THQ Nordic. This time, the Farm 51's paired up with Bandai Namco of all people, and they've got something to prove to me with Get Even. Get Even has a rather cliché setup for its story. You play as Cole Black, and yes, his name is Cole Black. It's very creative. Cole is an ex-military mercenary who's been sent on a mission to save a girl from her kidnappers. Who gave him this mission and why? He doesn't know. Cole has amnesia, and while that's just about one of the most cliché ways to begin any story, Get Even does something rather interesting with it. Early on, Cole wakes up in a run-down insane asylum, full of screaming patients who speak nonsense and a shadowy figure known only as Red, who communicates via television. Red explains a few things here and there, but his real goal is to use the machine he strapped to Cole's head in order to unlock Black's memory by reliving them in virtual reality. Any references to virtual reality are only within the game itself. To my knowledge, Get Even doesn't have any options for VR, so if you don't have access to that kind of equipment, you can still play the game. It's only VR in the sense of Cole himself playing through his own memories. The asylum is a place of darkness and mystery. The place presents itself as something you've seen 100 times in horror-related media and is somewhat reminiscent of Mount Massive from Outlast. It's obvious that not everyone is there by choice, but how Cole interacts with the world around him is rather important. Get Even states that the decisions players make will affect the outcome of the story. It's unclear what all events the game takes into account, but there are some specific instances where it is obvious. Helping patients escape could be both beneficial or detrimental depending on who it is. How Cole acts within his virtual reality-assisted memories, however, is where the real interesting things begin. Even though Get Even is a first-person shooter, Red states early on that killing people is something you want to avoid. Apparently, messing with memories this way can cause them to become corrupt, and in order to remember things correctly, Cole needs to employ stealth tactics. Stealth in Get Even is mediocre at best. The same could be said about its shooting, actually. The game doesn't do a whole lot with either mechanic, and they both end up being the bog standard of their genres. Cole can use his phone to access a map of an area, which will inform players of enemy locations as well as the direction they're looking in. But that's really it for stealth mechanics. There's nothing that gives any indication as to whether or not Cole is visible to the enemy, unlike the old Thief games where stealth was really the only option. Without any kind of visual aid in this way, knowing if you can be seen or not is really all up to guesswork. If you do get spotted, you can always shoot your way out of any situation. Cole can't take much in the way of damage though, so using cover is ideal and the only part of the game where the devs did anything really interesting with its shooting mechanics. In an early level, Cole gets himself access to a piece of equipment known as the corner gun, a weapon attachment that works the same way as its real-world counterpart, the corner shot. This weapon lets Cole both look and shoot around corners aided by his phone's camera, and is honestly really fun to use. I'm surprised that I've never seen this weapon in any other first-person shooter before. Considering the many tactical shooters such as the Rainbow Six games or SWAT and other stealth titles, I would have expected to come across it at some point before. After all, the corner shot has existed in reality since 2003, but the only other instance I've been able to find of it being used in a game are for some enemies from Wanted Weapons of Fate in 2009. Being able to both see and shoot around corners without exposing yourself helps make stealth sections somewhat possible, as well as letting Cole stay in cover during a firefight. But it is limited. You can only use one functionality of your phone at a time, and since the phone is what the corner gun uses to see around corners, it means you have to pick between the possibility of seeing your enemies yourself or looking at the map. Cole can also use his phone to interact with different memory figments in order to bring thoughts into reality, somewhat like how Elizabeth's tears worked in BioShock Infinite, adding both cover or possibly more weapons and ammunition to aid in the current situation. It's weird that Get Even has such a focus on shooting when it specifically tells you not to kill people. There is a stealth takedown move, and I'm not sure if it kills enemies or not, but it just feeds into the game's overall confliction. When not dealing with multitudes of people who want you dead, Get Even is almost a completely different game. These parts play out a lot like narratively driven exploration games that have been dubbed walking simulators by the masses. There's a lot of unique and interesting things done within the game's visuals during these sections, being how it replays past events or how levels change based on how Cole's mind remembers them or wants him to remember them. The most interesting parts, in my opinion, are the instances where Cole gets to explore parts of Red's mind and the world fades in and out of existence like clockwork. It looks really awesome, and the devs did some fantastic visual design with these sections. During these sections and your downtime between combat, it's good to keep an eye out for any interactable document or event you can find. Cole's phone will inform him if he's close to any points of interest, but won't say exactly where they are, so it's up to you, the player, to find them specifically. Each level has a specific amount of things to find in order to unravel the truth about that particular memory, and finding everything within a level can be somewhat beneficial. In between levels, there's a break room area that acts as a level select as well as informing players on how much evidence they have found. Finding 100% of everything in a level will then give players a code to unlock a door within that level, which turns into unlocking a new weapon to equip at the break room armory. You can get access to everything from a sniper rifle to a crossbow here, but this again is at odds with the whole point of not killing people, since there doesn't seem to be any non-lethal weapons from what I've found. Everything here becomes irrelevant anyway halfway through Get Even, as players take on the role of a different character with different abilities and no access to the break room nor its armory. So really, all of this extra stuff is kind of pointless unless you specifically want to experience more of the game's combat as Cole. This second character doesn't have the corner shot nor Cole's amazing and all-knowing phone. Instead, he has a wall hack ability to see nearby enemies and can warp to different locations or possess enemies to make them kill their friends. All of these functions use energy from an energy meter, so players will have to manage how much they use them and when they use it, which makes for some nifty puzzle-like combat scenarios. Honestly, I found this puzzle-like gameplay a lot of fun despite the game's basic feeling gunplay. Overall, Get Even really can't decide what it wants to be, and every interesting decision the developers make for it is counteracted by a different one. It wants to be a combat-oriented first-person shooter, but discourages killing enemies and has mostly uninspired gunplay. It wants to be a stealth game, but doesn't give players access to the tools that they need for that. It wants to be a narratively focused first-person exploration game, but won't commit to it. It really feels like the Farm 51 decided to make the game a first-person shooter not because it needed it or they really wanted to, but to avoid Get Even from being labeled as a walking simulator and dismissed by a large group of people who dislike those kinds of games. It's a shame since Get Even really does do a lot of interesting things narratively, even if the story does become very soap opera-like and honestly overstays its welcome. I can really see the great game within Get Even, but Farm 51 just wouldn't let it shine through. Instead, the game ends up being a mediocre shooter with basic stealth mechanics and a bit of a messy narrative. Still, I enjoyed my time with it, and if you like either first-person shooters or narratively focused first-person exploration games, then you may get something out of it as well. Get Even is available on Steam for $29.99 US, with a soundtrack priced at $9.99. I can't say that it's a bad game because it's really not, but it is a game that I have to forgive some parts that it does sloppily due to other parts it does really well. Thanks for watching. Please let me know what you think of the game or this video in the comments section. I'm MegapieMan, and I'll talk to you guys later. Want to see more quick peeks? Click on the video on the left for Long Live Santa, a Christmas-themed battle royale game, or click on the video on the right for Black Mirror, a dark and mysterious adventure game with a hint of the